distinguished participants in the Copenhagen Democracy Summit, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to express my appreciation to Prime Minister Rasmussen for inviting me to this prestigious forum organized by the Alliance of Democracies. It is a true honor for me and for my country, for this is the first time a foreign minister from Taiwan has been able to come this far for an event like this. It takes true courage to recognize that Taiwan deserves a chance to have its voice heard. And it takes even more courage for a country to ward off political pressure to invite Taiwan's foreign minister for any significant event. The fact that I can come and say a few words represents a new chapter in my country's continued national endeavor. I know many have made huge efforts in this process, in particular Prime Minister Rasmussen, and I would like to say that your hard work is held in the very highest regard. A simple thank you is not enough to express how much I appreciate this opportunity. Taiwan is still young as a democracy. We did not have a general election for the legislature until 1992, and the first direct presidential election was held in 1996. But now we have already had 3 peaceful turnovers of political power through popular presidential elections. On top of that, Taiwan is also ranked in the top tier in Asia in political, press, and speech freedoms. Moreover, Taiwan has also been ranked by a major Washington think tank as one of the freest economies in the world. Nevertheless, Taiwan's hard-earned democracy is not fully secured. We are constantly under threat. The military pressure has been increasing, our international presence has been squeezed, and foreign elements hostile to Taiwan's democracy have become deeply entrenched in our society. Influence operations and disinformation campaigns have also been rampant and active. The motivation for all these hostile actions have been obvious: to ruin Taiwan's democracy so that it is not attraction to people living under authoritarianism. Taiwan, with its democracy, is a danger to authoritarianism, so to speak. Even though our democracy has been under threat, we will not give up our democracy and democratic way of life. In fact, we are determined to make Taiwan's democracy a beacon for those longing for freedom, democracy, and the protection of human rights. We continue to speak up on the deterioration of human rights conditions and religious freedom in China. I'm not shy about having my voice heard in this regard. In fact, our government has not been shy. During the pro-democracy protests taking place in Hong Kong over the past few weeks, you could hear very clearly that the crowd thanked Taiwan for support. I'm not sure they thanked any other country. The protesters know that Taiwan is under serious threat and that it takes true courage for Taiwan to voice its support. Because of Taiwan's open support for Hong Kong, it is clear to the world by now that these two outposts of democracy share the same value, and our path and destinies are closely linked. We both stand on the front line against the expansionism of authoritarianism. Taiwan is under threat, but we are determined to survive and thrive, to prove that democracy is the better path for mankind. We are clear-headed regarding our responsibility as a country on the front line. Taiwan needs to hold firm and succeed so that people in Hong Kong and beyond can still see the beacon light of hope. We also know that if we fall, others may soon follow. It takes courage, wisdom, and determination to counter the expansion of authoritarianism. In my humble opinion, democracies must come together, like today, to share experiences and resources, and to solidify relations among democracies, big or small. We in Taiwan have always admired North European countries who are very generous with humanitarian assistance. It might be hard for us to catch up with, but we are certainly trying very hard to be a force for good in the world. Taiwan may be small, but we know we are willing and able to make invaluable contributions to the international campaign for democracy. After the US State Department held its first ministerial conference on religious freedom last fall, it began to consider the possibility of a regional conference. I volunteered and argued for it. The US government agreed to it, and we held the first regional conference on religious freedom in March this year. We invited religious and NGO leaders in East Asia to take part in the conference, with the US Ambassador for Religious Freedom, Sam Brownback, serving as a guest of honor. After the UN Security Council deliberated on the threat posed by North Korea's missile and nuclear tests to the neighboring democracies, it passed resolutions to sanction Pyongyang. Taiwan is not even a member of the United Nations, but we joined the international sanctions anyway. We took one step beyond the sanction by cutting trade with the regime. We also joined the international enforcement of sanctions on oil trade on high sea and money laundering activities. When there was an international call to support the provisional government in Venezuela in the hope of restoring democracy and salvaging the Venezuela economy from the ruins of the socialist regime, Taiwan once again joined the international effort. We have embraced the democratic forces there, made a pledge of humanitarian assistance, and delivered goods and material. I think any country that has made pledge to help has confronted the same treacherous path in making delivery. But Taiwan's donation, only 17 tons of medicine and medical supplies and 3 trucks, happened to be the first to arrive from the fellow democracies who made pledges. As I was told by a Venezuela democratic leader, Taiwan is the first one and probably the only one so far. We have also been working with the US government on the Pacific Island Leadership Program, or PILP, to train young and upcoming leaders from the Pacific countries, with half of the time in Hawaii's East-West Center and half of the time in Taipei. These young leaders' exposure to democracy and a democratic way of life can help shape their views so that they realize that democracy is the right political path. We have also established the Taiwan Scholarship to recruit university students from the Indo-Pacific and Latin America to study in Taiwan, so that they are not only exposed to Taiwan's democracy, but also getting a good education for their own career. We have also set up a job training program for countries in the Pacific and Latin America. We want to help these countries build the capacity to sustain their democracies. The total number of positions may not be large. Somewhat embarrassingly, it's only about 340 this year. We have tried very hard to increase the budget for it, but our legislature just keep scaling it back. And you know, democracy can be frustrating sometimes. In 2015, Taiwan signed an agreement with the United States to establish the Global Cooperation and Training Framework, or GCTF, as a way to advance regional, social, political, and economic interests. The framework covers areas such as women's empowerment, public health, environment protection, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, media literacy, which is to fight against disinformation, and ways to fight against corruption and law enforcement. We have already invited more than 400 officials and experts from 35 countries to take part in 19 GCTF workshops. It has been a huge success in building up the capacity of these democracies. It is so successful that Japan has decided to join as a co-sponsor beginning from this year. For your reference, we are in the process of inviting Australia and EU to participate in the GCTF so that we can campaign together to form an Indo-Pacific community of democracies. In short, what I'm telling you today is that Taiwan has been working very hard in campaigning for democracies. Our efforts are noted by some. On some occasions, senior US officials publicly mention that Taiwan is a democratic success story and a force for good in the world. We are quite pleased when we hear that, and it motivates us to do more for the global community. But we still have a long way to go before we can say that democracies have won and the ideological struggle is over. It has been quite emotional for me to see that in Hong Kong, popular elections were denied by Beijing. And press freedom, something the previous British colony was rather proud of, has been overshadowed by the economic clout of an authoritarian power. The rule of law, another feature for which Hong Kong used to stand tall in East Asia, has been chipped away since 1997. Elected legislators have been deprived of their political rights just because they don't want to sing China's national anthem. Now 1 million, maybe 2 million people in Hong Kong have taken to the streets just to cry out for one basic right, that individuals not to be turned over to China. You and I feel sad over the situation in Hong Kong, and it is heartbreaking to see 1 million or more Muslims interned, Tibetan leaders forced to go exile for decades, and Buddhist statues destroyed just because they have a religious faith. I'm not a Christian, but it brought tears to my eyes to see churches torn down and crosses burned. To me, all these acts against religion are obviously crimes against humanity. I'm sure some in this part of the world, even some in this room, have also experienced protest or even harassment just because they have a policy different from that of the Chinese government. And I'm also sure we can come up with many more examples where authoritarianism is trying to shape opinions in democracies through business opportunities and university exchange programs. Although these negative examples show that we still have a long way to go in campaigning for democracy and freedom. As a member of the party which pushed aside martial law and authoritarian rule in the 1980s, I have freedom, human rights, and democracy in my DNA. My government and I are committed and will continue to do what we can to promote and to help sustain democracy wherever possible. And since I'm here, I assure you that I will wholeheartedly grasp any and all possibilities and opportunities to work together with you. It will be a long campaign, but Taiwan will dig in as your partner, a reliable partner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Wu.